Hey folks, this is Waylon. I'm about to go live with Rachelle Robinett. I'm very excited to talk to her because she does um, functional nutrition, health, and it's an area I'm wildly ignorant about. Rachelle Robinett, founder of Pharmakon Supernatural. Hey you,
Hi.
we did it. Thank you for your patience.
Did it. How are
I
you?
I'm so good. I'm so good. I'm a little bit. It's been a challenge to shower and eat and do, work and do basic things because I'm house training a puppy. But
Oh,
uh, and
oh,
he's very, very popular, so it's impossible, as you may have heard, to get anywhere on time in Boulder right now.
I love that. Well, I'm having the same issues with basic mobility, but that's just because I have vacation brain. So,
Yeah, yeah. So maybe let's start with that. So, how was your vacation?
oh, it was great. It
Yeah,
was great. Um, yeah, I was in Costa Rica and I love Costa Rica. I have traveled a lot of Latin America and South America and a lot of the world, but that part of the world tends to be my favorite. And I love jungles and just like getting, out of the city, off the grid, into barefoot sun and surf and all the green density. And it just feels so effective in such a short period of time. You can really just reprogram yourself. So it
so
was awesome.
the jungle beach life does something for you that New York City doesn't.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
So yeah, I was reading up on you, and I've interviewed hundreds of people in the wellness area, I've interviewed Michael Pollan, who you quote in one of your interviews, and just so many people, and I still feel like most of us in this world kind of wildly ignorant and a little bit intimidated with all the world that you so clearly enjoy,
Yeah.
which is, herbal. I mean, you could describe it better than me, but, herbal, how herbs can help your health, health generally. You seem to be, from everything I'm reading and on Instagram, like you really enjoy being incredibly healthy and active. So I am a huge fan of the blue zones. Costa Rica has one of them. And I think I'm pretty healthy, but how do you unpack? Because I've read like four of your interviews now with, Goop, Well and Good, etc. But how do you unpack this stuff for, that whole book series, like Whatever for Idiots? I feel like that's what I need from Rochelle. So if we're
Yeah.
just starting out, like most of us can relate to the beach, jungle, health, but a lot of us are less healthy when we travel because traveling doesn't have great food. Like
Yeah.
maybe let's just start with your recent trip since you're in travel brain. Like what are some basic wellness tips for traveling?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, traveling can be particularly challenging, like you mentioned. One of the things that I specifically look for, and I'm not implying that everybody needs to do this, but at this point, one of the things that I do is I choose places that I know are going to have food that I can either access, like there's great produce there,
Mm,
or there's, some sort of food nearby. And I actually look into that before I go, because
mhm.
at this point, that's such a priority for me that I know I'm going to feel even better. I'm going to enjoy it even more. I mean, it's enjoyment, inherently when you're getting to eat that kind of bounty, right? That local, incredible food. So, you can take that approach, of course, or just doing a little bit of, planning, research, consideration ahead of time. What do I need to either bring, or what do I need to find in that area that's going to make me feel supported and feel well? Is it a grocery store? Is there a grocery store between like where I land and where I'm going? Is it specific restaurants? Doing some research into the restaurants ahead of time. Are there farmers markets?
Yeah.
It depends on
I
where
mean,
you're
every
headed.
time I visit LA, we don't think of LA as very healthy, but they have vast,
Yeah,
huge farmers markets in many neighborhoods.
yeah,
So, no, that's a great reminder. My usual approach, which I think you would not be a fan of, is at least historically in airports, there's like no good food.
yeah.
So you know, I've been intermittent fasting before it was cool in airports. But when I land, you know, I love eating the local. So you're saying try to not just eat at fun restaurants and stuff, but find places with local cuisine, local farmers markets, fresh produce, eating
Yeah.
less processed, you were saying.
Yeah, and I mean, and those can go hand in hand in terms of, you know, getting your foodie kicks and like eating really fun local stuff. But just I think a little bit of foresight, a little bit of consideration. Like I'm going to land at a certain time, and I know I'm going to need something. Like we know we're going to need to eat the whole time we're there. So do we have a little bit of a map of some of the places that we want to hit? And your airport comment reminds me that intermittent fasting is amazing for travel. And
Good
also I
to know.
always, yeah,
Yeah.
I always travel. I make myself a huge meal and I fly with it, you know,
Mm.
because you can take this. I have a plain salad. It's really just like a huge veggie bowl. And I'll fly. And this trip was a perfect example. All of my travel to and from was delayed and all these, you know, had all these sorts of trouble, you know, problems. And I had food the whole time because I had prepared like, you know, enough
Mm.
food to last me the entire travel day, even though it was supposed to be a 4 hour flight. It was not. So that kind of thing can be a lifesaver too.
That's so
So
smart. Yeah. And I think that's probably the unhealthiest thing about traveling, other than the carbon emissions, is, you know, the stress. Like I was just flying to winter in Canada to visit my mom, and there were 5 delays. No
yeah,
kidding, on one of the
that's
flights.
intense.
And even though physically I'm just sitting around reading a great book, something about it, everyone gets so stressed. And, you know,
Yeah.
Blue Zone style, we did all connect. So the Blue Zones, which it sounds like you're a big fan of this notion as well. Do you want to explain that to folks? I love that as an approach to living life.
It's, you know, I mean, arguably it's still the best. These are the sort of undisputed pillars of health that we find in these different, you know, zones in the world. And, you know, it's having a sort of moment again right now because Dan Buettner's, you know, got a new book. He's got a really good cookbook. He's kind of talking about it again. But in everything that, you know, that I teach and that I follow, the blue zones are like the perennial advice. You know, they're the foundations of health. It's nutrition and movement and sleep and community, purpose. You know, there's some more specifics you can dig into each of those, but they're the sort of things that we know. And I think that also helps for anybody who's new to the world of like what is natural health or nutrition and wellness and what's a fad and what is,
Yeah.
you know, foundational. The blue zones logic and kind of proof, it's never changed, and
Yeah.
it is really that those pillars that can be that everything gets built on top of. They're the most important, the most effective, tried and true. So
Yeah, I really appreciated that. It was funny. One of the interviews I was reading about you, you were saying, "Oh yeah, can you tell I love trends?" And you know, I've covered video interviewing, podcast, you know, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of businesses at the Natural Products Expos, and I would get paid to cover trends, and I hated trends. And I read that, and I was like, wait, what? And then literally a few paragraphs later, you're like, you know, can you, like you said, sort of the opposite, which is like trends are kind of come and go, they're fun, but the pillars always remain, which is in the blue zones, which are these, I think it's like, how many blue zones are there?
I don't remember. A
Like,
handful. It's not
yeah,
a
let's
lot.
say 10,
Mm-hmm.
give or take, around the world, wildly different areas. Loma Linda, California, one I think is Nosara,
So the
Costa
Nicoya
Rica,
Peninsula, yeah.
and then Japan, and is Greece, is these areas where a lot of people live to more than 100 years old. And you
Yeah.
went over it quickly, but like basic organic social activity. So not just calling people up, which is great, but like talking to the barista, talking to the people sitting outside on the sidewalk, having nonstop community. And
Yeah.
then, you know, eating very simple food. I love that,
Mm-hmm.
like your plain salad, or, you know, you talked about I think one of your favorite meals is a very hearty basic salad
Yeah,
at one point.
just like a bunch of veg. I just call it like a
Yeah.
veg pile.
Yeah.
It's like I mean, it's what I eat
I
most.
love that.
Yeah.
It's so weird because I'm like a big guy and I love spice and I love, I love all these things, but there's almost nothing I like more than a salad with a lot of stuff in it. Like,
Yeah.
I think people think of salads as so boring and wilted lettuce and whatever, but
Sure.
they can be so fun.
Yeah.
My mom would put
Yeah.
choke hearts in and olives and all whatever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the way to kind of break through, like you mentioned, that idea that they are these sad, wilted, simple things that aren't going to keep us full and aren't going to keep us strong and are going to be boring. There almost needs to be a different name for the sort of pile of, the pile of amazing vegetables. They can be raw, they
Yeah.
cannot be raw, because it's a whole world for sure. And to the point about trends, it's funny. I've never had somebody kind of pick up on like, wait, you like trends, and then also you like these, unchanging. I think trends are just, they're fascinating, and in wellness in particular, or maybe that's just because that's the world that I inhabit. You see all of these different inputs that come in and that sort of provide the momentum for these trends, and they hit a zeitgeist moment where the cultural psyche is in a certain place and our climate priorities are in a certain place and science is doing something, and they create these little axes where you get this burst of a trend. And I think it's fascinating to follow. I mean, I also like fashion too, and that happens in fashion, right? So I think it's fascinating. I think you can work with those, and work with that momentum and guide people into a healthy place. But of course, there's also a ton of capitalization on trends with the wrong sort of motivations for quick sales and
Yeah.
and that sort of thing. So
Well,
my
I think
my
people
intention
like
is.
you. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say my intention is to be integrous with them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, I think, your approach is clear. I didn't have a problem with you saying it. I was more surprised. But I think people like you and hopefully Elephant Journal and our writers, we play a role in like weaving trends back into the cultural and healthy and environmentally responsible fabric from which they came. Because often it's like capitalism discovers some indigenous,
Yeah.
practice. I just wrote about my first ayahuasca experience, and that's obviously trendy in some ways, or mushrooms or whatever it is, but they've been around for thousands of years typically. And then,
Yeah.
as we saw during the pandemic, we had pandemic puppies, we had pandemic cactuses, entire areas of Arizona were getting raped and pillaged from endangered cactus species and sold for thousands of dollars to, kind of armchair hipsters on Instagram, which, again, cactus is beautiful and it's great, but, I kind of hate trends because you see it with Shein or, all the fast fashion stuff.
Yeah.
Where you're just exploiting, people just exploit other people and animals without looking.
Yeah.
But trends can be taken advantage of by people like you or me, hopefully, where we can say, this is great. It's been around for a long time. Here's the tradition it comes from. It can be healthy. Like, is that your approach?
Yeah, no, I think you said it perfectly. And it reminds me of another point about trends that I like, and that is that they tend to captivate new communities, new audiences, new people, right? And can pull new people into a thing that is ultimately, when you can ground them, like you're saying, back into the roots of the trend, then that's really advantageous. And
they're
mushrooms is totally a gateway. Yeah. And
I love
like you said, psychedelics, mushrooms right now, there's, if that's going to bring people into the power of plants, then major world, like a whole world awaits them. And I felt the same way about that when CBD was ridiculous, as a trend. I'm like, well, if it opens the door for people to understand what, these thousands of other plants can do, then there's some good there. So
Yeah, and CBD is such a great example because we had advertisers like getting into fights with each other over our limited at the sponsor space on Elephant. Like Bad Blood was out there in the CBD world. Like it was just
yeah.
such a crazy world where people were starting CBD companies left and right. And then, I interviewed a bunch of people about CBD, and thoughtful people, hopefully, and they were like, well, there's quality CBD and here's what to look for. And there's really not great stuff. And that's, so there's always discernment. I feel like judginess gets such a bad name. I'm very judgy. I think it's good to discern, like in a trend, particularly, like this is quality, this is responsible, this is, and how can I go deeper if I want to, or it can just be fun.
Yeah.
And this stuff maybe is like that, I read recently, like Rihanna is often like held up as a feminist icon, which is, that part is great. But, she's a billionaire now, but her fast fashion line, like is often employing, women and children in unfair working conditions. And many people are protesting that. So it's like, we always have to try to like just be thorough and go deeper and be caring. Anyway, I'm blabbing about my stuff, but
same page.
yeah, but I mean, I guess that comes up. So you have a whole company around herbs, right? Herbal health.
Yeah. So Supernatural is my company, Pharmakon Supernatural, and it started about 8 or 9 years ago, and grew, just step by step, person by person, product by product, from private practice and classes and cafe apothecary into a lot of online education.
So you had a cafe apothecary? Or
yeah, for many, many years. We moved it online last year.
Wow.
So that was a ton of fun, like loved being in the physical space. Such a great way to, see what people are curious about. I mean, mushrooms were the most, frequently asked about item, and that was probably 6 years ago. So you just get, it's similar to Instagram and social media. You're in the weeds with people, but you also get to see them like drinking the drinks or touching the teas or playing with the products. And that's actually where, so herbal gummies are one of our main products. And those came out of me watching people engage with herbs and ask the questions like, how do I use this powder? How do I use this tincture? This is confusing. And I was looking for something that met them more where they were. You learn how to talk about this stuff, right? It's just anybody can walk into the cafe. They may have no interest in herbalism at all. They just want a tea. So the physical space is very fun. But yeah, we moved it online last year.
Yeah, you're kind of describing me. We have this amazing place here in Boulder called Rebecca's Apothecary. And it's just like a sacred space. It's unbelievable. And I go in and, every single person who works there probably has a lot of the same knowledge and caring set that you do. And you can just kind of like abuse their time, and they'll spend minutes explaining stuff to you. And it's so helpful because it's like going to the hardware store. It's a similar experience. We have a great local hardware where they'll just explain stuff. Because I don't understand, you have a lot of education, layers and layers and layers of it. It's intimidating from the outside, like simple things like you quoted Michael Pollan's food rules, like eat less or eat plants, not too much, or mostly plants. I can't remember something. Yeah, it's very basic and simple, but there's so much. And I bet having that apothecary was delightful for you. It's like having, being able to test out the public constantly.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely was. One of my other favorite parts about the apothecary was playing whatever music I wanted in the space. That was very fun.
What kind of music did you, when you think of that, what were you playing?
I am so bad with genres because the sub genres of music are they're a whole world. I love it depends though. So I love dance music, but sometimes I would play like gongs. You could come in and it could be like, I don't know. It totally
This
varied,
cafe,
but it was usually like pretty like bumping.
yeah, nice. There's this cafe in where my mom lives up in Canada where it sounds like the exact same music in a good way. It's
Oh,
always like some arcane, like happy kind of singing jazz that I've never heard, like from the
sure.
20s or like from
Oh,
the
cool.
last 20s. Um, and I'm always like, how do they know this music? It is so amazing. And how have I never heard it once? Like, this isn't mainstream stuff.
Yeah.
And so much respect to, like, there's only a few places in the world of my travels that have consistent like music where you're just like, wow, it
Yeah.
adds so much to the space.
Yeah.
Usually it's like wildly random and kind of out of sync with.
Oh, yeah. I just lost your sound on that last. There we go. Oh,
Today's
sweet.
world. So, so what do you do? I actually didn't research this, but do you try to source your herbs in a environmentally responsible, in a labor responsible way?
Yeah, so we definitely do the absolute best that we can, and it depends on the product, where the herb, like where we're sourcing the herb from. So, for example, in our teas, in the past and then in the future, those are sourced very purposely for some of the things that you mentioned. So, regionality, that's always been a big thing for me. We're going to do a lot with this sort of small batch or almost like a cover crop approach. So product that's being used or that would be considered kind of excess. So you get really good like red clover from that purpose.
Cool.
That's kind of upcoming. And then for
So
our
like regenerative,
gummies,
the cover crops.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Or working with small farms who are going to have like one season of a certain herb, and that's it. And when it's done, it's like a limited run of something that's really special,
Wow.
really seasonal. The herbals, which are herbal gummies, because we're producing those at such a large scale, we need more consistency. So we can't do that really small batch sourcing. So for those, we source those ingredients from all over the world. Again, with an attention to the best quality that we can, but they come from all over, and every sort of circumstance is different.
Right.
So, and some are, oils and tinctures and powders, and it's a bit more of a complicated process. So
That is
kind of depends on the
hard because
level
I
of
have a friend I interviewed about coffee, which many of us
yeah,
drink. Be interested to know what you think about it. But I feel like there's always like 80 articles about how coffee is healthy and unhealthy every single year.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but he said a statement that like has stuck with me because I'm social. I'm going to cafes like a couple times a day, working on my laptop, whatever. And you said if it's not organic, it's almost guaranteed for coffee. And I think you said the same about chocolate, that there's slave labor involved. And that hit me pretty hard because I would say 90% of the cafes I love, they have great coffee maybe, but they definitely, organic is
yeah,
rare in cafes and coffee.
yeah,
So, is painful when we're trying to be healthy, we're trying to be a benefit, and then it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, like factory farming for animals.
yeah, yeah. Well, I feel like I should I mean, that is that.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying
But
to put you on the spot. I know you're a good person, you care. It's just this globalization, it's convenient and it's magical in a lot of ways, but
yeah,
it's also like it enables a lot of things to be swept under the rug in
yeah,
terms of our responsibility in that supply demand
yeah,
cycle. But
yeah,
what
definitely.
what do you think about? I'm gonna guess you don't drink coffee.
I do though.
Yes, I love being wrong.
Oh, you love being wrong. I love that. I love learning new things. I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about how, an appetite for being wrong or for learning things sort of threatens the self, right? We have to be ready for some self-concept to be to come into question. I do drink coffee. I drink about 4 ounces of cold brew that I make here at home,
That's
and
kind of
then
hard.
I mix it.
Cold brew that's tough.
I mix it with herbal coffee, and that's my caffeine intake for the day.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, you've been doing a bunch of videos, I think, with Well and Good. You need to have like I need a morning show with you, like where you dumb it down a lot and you repeat things slowly, like I'm a child. But because
I love it. I would love to do a show. We're kind of working on something like that, but
yeah.
Who knows?
Well, just from one person, my request is repeat everything and say it really slowly. And it's okay if I feel dumb. I'm ready for that. So, if you had a magic wand, Queen Rachelle, it's Rachelle, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We hadn't met, so I hadn't heard it verbalized. But, what are some basic unhealthy habits that you see in a lot of people, including healthy people? Like, I'm very healthy. I eat organic, zero waste. I bike around. I'm climbing usually, all that. But I bet in my daily habits, there's a lot of things you wouldn't approve of. Like, I'll probably eat meals in front of the TV, or, I don't know. I eat out a lot. What are some habits, like sugar, maybe bread,
Yeah.
that you're not a big fan of?
Yeah.
Or that you are a big fan of, like things we should do?
Yeah. Well, it's
Is that a boring question?
No, it's a hard question because there's such a spectrum, right? So, and I really do, like, I think there aren't really things that I like don't approve of, right? It's just that might be the first thing that we want to revisit.
That was a very polite way of putting it.
The basics are really those basics that we started talking about, and it, from a nutritional standpoint, the more plants we can eat, really, 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 truly, the better it is, the closer to the way it came out of the ground or off of the tree or whatever it is, the more, whole and unrefined, the better.
And I guess we all assume we know why that is, but what's the problem with eating Cheerios or, whatever it is, that thing, donuts that we grew up with and we love them?
Yeah. Well, they give us a lot of joy, and there's value in that. And so those should be allowed in life. But I think creating a foundation that our default is to this natural whole, unprocessed way of eating allows us the flexibility to enjoy the donuts or enjoy whatever it is that gives us pleasure, and to not feel like hell afterward, or to not be addicted to them, or to not instigate some kind of disease or severe imbalance, that nobody wants. And I think even something as benign as Cheerios, when we start to get into processed foods, it tends to become more often a refined, sugar, essentially. So if we're eating Cheerios, we're eating sugar, and then it sort of, it exacerbates these blood sugar imbalances, cravings, energy swings, gut health issues, on and on and on. And we may not even realize that, like, the Cheerios are sort of secretly sabotaging the way we feel, what we want. We sort of end up fighting against ourselves, because these things that we're putting in are actually undermining our best efforts. So,
and do you feel similarly about bread and pasta, things like that?
Generally I do. I think that those things are beautiful, and again, like, there should be room for them, but to have them on a regular basis for most people is really problematic, actually. It's primarily about the sugar aspect. Some people, it's about the gluten as well. Not everybody has to be because of that. And And when we rely on, refined carbs, then we generally end up destabilizing ourselves and creating inflammation and getting into a cycle that can be really hard to get out of. So.
Yeah. And that affects our moods, our burnout, our stress, our anger, our frustration, whatever our kind of, we're not grounded, we're not calm, we're not present as easily.
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. It creates a roller coaster. And I'm sure a lot of people listening right now have digestive issues, because that is so common now. So common. I feel like almost everybody that I talk to at this point that's coming to me for help is like, oh yeah, and my digestion, my digestion's terrible. Like, it's just this kind of, almost this it's almost a norm. It's almost this expectation, like, yeah, no, my digestion's not good, and it can be, and our gut is so central to brain health and all the other, immune system. Autoimmune conditions are a huge epidemic at this point. The gut is central to that.
My mom was just diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune.
Yeah, they're very, very, very common. Yeah.
So if my digestion is good, is that a sign that, like, I'm doing pretty well?
You're doing something right. You're doing more than one thing right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. And your energy is good. Your digestion is good. You're sleeping well. Yeah. Your mood is good.
The only thing that's weird with me that I can think of is I have 2 coffees a day, so I'm not crazy about coffee, but I do find that I'm, like, really sensitive with it. I joke socially, like, with friends, that it's like 20 years of coffee buildup. So I don't know if that's it, but it does feel like if I have coffee, I'm looking at my hands, because I feel like my hands start shaking.
Yeah, but you have 2 a day though.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I never have more. I don't want more. It's too much. But
are you on the herbal coffee yet?
Rasa or something?
Rasa's very good.
Yeah, we talked about Lopa. She's in town. She just messaged me about something. I'm not. I could. I had a girlfriend who put me on tea for a year or 2, but I relapsed when our relationship allowed me to, or lack of relationship.
Coffee is really hard to replace, because, like, tea doesn't taste the same, matcha doesn't taste the same, but there are some really good herbal coffees on the market at this point that can be awesome.
Because tea, honestly, caffeinated tea is just as hard on me.
Sure.
It's the caffeine for me.
Yeah, you probably want those adaptogens. Who doesn't?
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, really?
I've heard the word a lot.
It's a trend. So really, really briefly, the adaptogens are they are a set of herbs that are going to help to normalize stress response, energy expenditure, and recovery. But the best description that I've heard of their sort of energy input output actually came from Rasa, and they were describing them like fuel that is also, it's like they're giving you fuel and filling up the tank, as opposed to coffee, which is just a taker, right? It's just causing you to push that, like, adrenaline and cortisol. And these adaptogenic herbs help you perform, and they're also, like, filling up your reserves at the same time.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that you haven't seen the Fast and Furious franchise, and you haven't missed out much. What's that?
I think I saw one. I saw at least one.
Well, with respect to the fans out there, I'm sure there's not a lot of overlap, but they're all the same. But in every single one, there's a scene where they, like, have some high octane fuel that they, like, can turn on. It's like the gas or something, and the car goes crazy, but it only lasts, like, for 10 seconds.
That's
and then
coffee.
That's coffee for me.
Yeah,
I feel like stressed out by it. But I love the ritual of it.
Yeah.
But I could just replace that ritual with Ross. So what would you, let's say I start being like you, trying to be like Rachelle, and I have 1 coffee in the morning with whatever you had it with, oat milk or something, and then no coffee in the afternoon, what coffee substitute would you recommend? Like with that adaptogenic?
Yeah. The the two that I know and love are rasa and mud. Mud water is the other one. Mud
And
water
do you
and rasa.
are you allowed to say if you prefer one? I feel like you know both too well.
I know both too
You can
well.
whisper.
They're different.
They're
They're different.
okay, they're different. That's very
They're
polite.
different. Yeah, they're different. And they have different tastes and different textures.
Yeah.
Um
I'm gonna
and
tell Lopa you recommended mud water, and I'm gonna DM the mud water people and say,
they'll
to start
probably
some
both.
shit. So
Yeah, they're
yeah,
they're both very good. I mean, it'll depend on taste and texture in terms of what you like of the two.
okay, that's an obvious point. Like I should just try both and see
We'll
what I
try
relate.
both.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And I like those. I can't do, like, I don't drink. I love the idea of matcha. I think it's brilliant. Everyone who drinks matcha, like, more power to you. Or teas like pu'er tea, it's
Yeah.
great.
No
I
way.
can't drink matcha on an empty
Pu'er is
stomach.
Pu'er is magic. All respect to it, but it stresses me out way more than coffee.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Pu'er
You're
is
super sensitive to caffeine. I'm surprised that you drink it.
yeah. I think I get away with it because I'm healthy and active in other ways, but I think I've always been sent. I actually, my hands have shaken since I was a little kid.
Hmm.
So, but I feel it. Like when I drink coffee in the morning, it's like,
Yeah.
but not an entirely good way. But I love it.
Yeah.
But that's health and lack of bad health, right? We all love like
Totally.
donuts or the Cheerios. We love things, or I'm a vegan, so people are always saying, "But I love this thing. How can I let go of it, even if I know it's not good for me? Heart disease. It's not good for the planet. It's not good for the animals, obviously. So I need to walk my own talk and try an alternative on that. I love that. Well, I feel like I have 80 more questions